Hello, everyone. I welcome you to another Clarity series. Today, I would like to talk to you about a very typical situation in which the most interesting part is we always knew what we want. However, still we stay stuck in it, indecisive, and almost confused in the analysis paralysis, not really being able to arrive at that decision. Sounds familiar? So, I'm going to talk to you about this particular scenario, which often keep us stuck, limited, directionless, and confused. And I'm going to share this through a story from my life. And I'm sure some part of it, maybe not the entire, will resonate. And along with that, I also have a tool in this which can help you get started. So let's begin. Let me take you back to the time when I knew what I needed to do. However, I still couldn't do it. So, friends, many years ago, I was working in an organization where I was one of the most senior lead there, and I had given that organization many of my years, working hours, literally building it up from the scratch. So it was a startup, and I would have I gave my 200% to it. However, a time came when things were not really, I would not say the word favorable, but not really moving anything that would help me grow as a leader. So I've kind of hit a ceiling, and I knew this almost 1.5, 2 years beforehand that I need to leave this. I knew it for months, maybe even years. And it also this question would come up with sometimes in conversation with my friends, and they would say, hey, are you still there? And every time I would come across this specific question, which was to do with something I knew I had to leave, I had no answer, even though I knew I needed to leave, but I just couldn't bring myself to take that decision. Have you ever been stuck like this, where you know the answer but you're unable to act? Well, if that's the case, friends, this video is for you. And then let's move ahead with my story. So my friends would ask me, uh, like when they would, whenever we would have discussion around work, every time this question would crop up about being here, where I knew I needed to leave, I would just pretend before them and say, no, no, everything is all fine. Wherein I would go back home and kept thinking about it, that why is it that I'm so stuck here? I would knew it, and how I knew it. For this, let me also now take you back few months into this particular job I was in which I knew, however, I was stuck and I was not taking a decision. The first red flag uh, that I could see was when someone my level was hired in the organization 1.5 years ago, and then there was other subtle signs of certain projects being given to that other person, and my performance appraisal had more feedback than before of things I always kept thinking, oh, is it? Um, I was in an argumentative mode. So there were some red flags. Um, there was one person, a very difficult colleague, which I do not had a very good rapport and relationship with. So that was also very obvious to others. Maybe the water cooler talks. Yet I knew that I was hit. I've had hit a ceiling. I was not really was able to muster that courage to make that move. I was caught up in this analysis paralysis. I gave myself all the reasons I could give. This firm has nurtured me. I have a sentimental connection. This is something I built up from the scratch. Other than this, what if? This is one very a term we all have when we second guess. So I had a lot of what ifs. Okay, if I apply there, what if, what if, what if? And in fact, I had an offer while I was going through this from a an IT giant. It's one of the leading IT giant, and I can't share the name, but anyone, if you hear the name, you would say I was such a fool to have said a no to them as well when they offered me a very similar role. And because I took a lot more time that I was supposed to, and somehow I was like literally stuck. I was kind of like trapped into this decision paralysis, rather analysis paralysis. The real reason, friends, was not the reasons I was giving myself or the reasons I was constantly narrating to others as well, the kind of connection I have, or these were just surface reasons. Underneath that was the grief. Now, if you're wondering what kind of grief is this grief, this loss is about something which I would lose when I will lose this job, and I was not ready to face it. I was not ready to let go of that loss. And in my case, it was my sense of identity. Uh, if you have seen the previous video series in this particular clarity coaching series, you may find in one of my other videos I've shared about how when I was put on a PIP, I kind of had a identity crisis. So this other firm where I was working, the grief, the loss of giving up the identity that I connected myself to that particular title and role, which I had nurtured for years and years and brought it to this level, was something perhaps I was not really willing to let go of, or I was afraid to lose that. So, friends, perhaps if, like me, you are also caught up in this analysis paralysis, not really able to decide, maybe the reason also is into the grief, the loss you're not really willing to acknowledge and let go of. And this could be losing identity, losing security, losing sense of belonging, or a sense of approval. It could be anything. In my case, it was a sense of identity. Then I connected with my coach. And what finally really moved me with this work went on for almost a year. This was the longest that I could have hired help for myself. And what really shifted me, initially it was tough. Um, Almost 3, 4 months, I could not even come to the terms and have a breakthrough. But then when I started to look at this thing by bringing myself tapping into my inner courage and for once first understand what is it that I'm clinging so close to. And it's, as you say that you have to look into the eyes of fear is when the fear dissipates. So when I did this, and it was not easy, friends, honestly, it took me first 4 months, it didn't really work out. Then I continued with my work. But after fifth 6 month is when I started to slowly move towards the new version that I intend to reach, the goal. And here's where, which brought that internal shift. And this helped me with finding some meaning to what is it that I'm clinging so closely and so strongly to, and what really will happen if I just let this go off. When I sat with my grief, when I acknowledged it, and when I said, This is not the be all and end all. I mean, this is not the final job that I'm gonna do. And yes, I had my share of traumas, my identity crisis. I was ill-treated in my previous organization, wherein in comparison to this organization, which gave me so much comfort, love, growth, professional, personal, I felt kind of a new identity which I want to hold dear to my life and not really was willing to give it up. But then I also understood that this is another extreme way of clinging to things because companies are artificial entities and they come and go. What stays behind is me, the person. So I learned to first acknowledge my grief, then also have the courage to let go of it because my own core was way bigger than the grief that I was clinging to. I also learned that there's a lot of difference between knowing and doing. Knowing is not the same as doing. So, like my case, I'm well aware I need to leave, there are red flags, but somehow I'm not able to bring myself to take that decision. So, intellectually, we know what we need to do, but still we are unable to. So this was because I was not stuck on the decision. I was stuck on what the decision meant to me, the personal meaning I held very close to my heart. So, friends, if you ever find yourself very, very stuck into a decision, try to keep the decision aside and just answer this question: what does this decision means to you? The meaning you're attaching to it has and hold the answer what you're looking for. So let me give you some three reasons why, despite knowing, we cannot act sometimes and we get stuck in the analysis paralysis. First, just like my case, you haven't grieved what you lose. So I was unwilling to let go of this identity of mine, this new identity which I had built up with so much of effort. And I knew if I lose this job, even though this job was no longer promising me any growth or any kind of further progress, I was not willing to give it up. My coach helped me understand that every decision is a trade off, is a loss. Leaving means we leave, means we lose. It could be security, identity, familiarity, or anything else. But this is how life is. Nothing is permanent. There's an element of impermanence everywhere, and it applies here as well. It applies to our emotions, it applies to our states, it applies to the moment, and it applies to our external and internal world. Nothing stays forever. Once I understood this, it made, I kind of had a change of approach, which then helped me arrive at the decision. And it was, I would not say it was easy, but then it really helped me, break through, find my breakthrough. Second reason is when we are waiting for certainty. So this is also very applicable to me, maybe even for you, if in case you're stuck in a similar situation like mine. I wanted a particular guarantee. I like every time I'm applying, so for the IT giant offer that I said a no, maybe perhaps my approach was wrong. I was looking for the similarity that this firm had offered me. So I wanted that guarantee. I really want to know that it has, because I no longer want to go through the same ordeal again. I was so traumatized by my previous career setbacks. I was like, no, I'm not willing to take any risk any further. What if I fail? What if I don't succeed? What if I land up in the same situation again? So I never wanted that, even if it means I just stay stuck. So, one but fact here, friends, is that growth or risk, I mean, nothing happens with guarantees or certainties. The whole model of our life, of this world, is uncertain. All we have to do is just to learn to live with it. Because if we seek something that do not exist, I repeat, if we seek something that do not exist, which is a certainty or guarantee, then we continue to remain exhausted, stuck, burnt out, lost, heedless most of the time. So have the courage and remember this is how the whole world is operating. It's uncertain. Finally, the final reason here is you're protecting something you don't realize you're protecting. So going back to my story, the pattern, when I did the work, what I understood, this was my main thing. It was my identity, as I mentioned to you earlier, and I was not willing to let go of it. In your case, it could also be a relationship, something which you are trying to protect, and you're not realizing this pattern is what is keeping you stuck in taking that decision, despite you know that you have to make a decision. Or it could be your self-image, or it could be anything else. I've just put this as some examples for you to understand, because not everyone may perhaps have an identity crisis the way I had. So think this is another reason where we protect something we don't realize we are protecting, and the pattern underneath is what is keeping us stuck. So how do you finally move? So how do you really come out of this analysis paralysis? The answer to that, friends, is you don't really wait until you are ready. You know why? Because you'll never be ready. There is no such thing called one fine day things gonna work out. There is no such thing. There are no guarantees. There are no certainties. It is only the day you choose, you're ready. It could be today, it could be any time you feel you're ready. That's it. And this is the only sure shot formula to move ahead, where you let yourself grieve of what you're losing and then still move ahead. I stayed stuck for so long because I was afraid of the unknown, afraid of losing my identity, afraid of what will people say, they would think. I was afraid that I might land up in a similar situation. And even though being stuck in the analysis paralysis, which was destroying my professional growth, one day I decided that I will choose discomfort. Enough is enough, I said. And that day, the moment I took this decision, I have decided. I said this, it's in my journal entries. I sometimes go back and read that page. That day, I was terrified. But then that was a day where my life started again. I, for very long, could not really find another such good job opportunity, the one that I rejected before from an IT giant. However, I did find a decent one, a decent job. And not everything worked out perfectly. It never does. But I was happy that I was finally able to own myself, own my decision, and move ahead with it. Because the decision I chose was I chose discomfort over paralysis. So I have a question for you. If you ever find yourself in such a similar situation, pay attention to this. What do you know you need to do, but you can't do? What is the real reason you are stuck? Write your problem in as much detail as possible. Then try and answer this question. This will help you get started. Other than this, I also have a 7-day email no cost course. This will help you to really figure out and make your move. Because I've been there, I have lived that life, and I know what it is. This course is your rescue, the way my coach and my other sources were. So having lived through it, I know what it takes. So I've put all that into it and created this. The link to the description, I mean, it's there in the description box of this video. If you want to enroll, just get in there and get started. Next, remember friends, you don't really have to wait for that one fine day until you are ready. Just have to take that first step. One of that also could be book a clarity call with me. If you find yourself, if very similar to the situation I described, to the story that I just shared with you today, I invite you to a no cost clarity call. You could check the link to that call, which is given in the description box of this video. Book your call, we'll connect, and we'll connect online, and then we take it on from there. Thanks for watching. I don't really want you to wait the way I did until I was ready. All you have to do is just take your first step. And I wish you the best of everything. Thank you.